Hey guys, tonight we slip softly into the world of Vikings, but not the fierce battles or the longships slicing through icy seas. No, tonight it's all about something a bit closer to the face, the gentle yet mighty art of Viking beard grooming. Imagine yourself trudging through a misty Scandinavian morning, the chill air brushing your cheeks while your beard, thick and tangled, holds the stories of your ancestors. But before you get too cozy, here's a cheeky reality check. You probably won't survive this without accidentally pulling a beard hair or two trying to master their grooming secrets. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. I'm curious if you're beard curious from the southern hemisphere or basking in northern sunlight right now. Now dim the lights maybe, turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your beard, that glorious tangle of hair adorning your chin, isn't just a matter of warmth or brute manliness in Viking culture. From the rugged fjords of Norway to the windy coasts of Denmark, beards were vital identity markers. They weren't simply about looking fierce for a raid or hiding from the cold. They told the world who you were. Whether you were a respected chieftain, a seasoned trader, or a humble farmer, your beard was your silent statement. Historically, Vikings took great pride in their facial hair. Archaeologists have uncovered combs carved from bone and antlers, sometimes intricately decorated, found in Viking graves. These weren't your run-of-the-mill grooming tools. Their very existence signals a culture that valued neatness and care. Contrary to popular medieval stereotypes of wild, unkempt barbarians, Norsemen were often meticulously groomed. Historians still argue whether the beard was primarily a social status symbol or a more spiritual emblem tied to Norse beliefs. Interestingly, beards also served practical purposes. The thick, bushy growth helped shield faces from the biting cold and harsh winds sweeping through the Scandinavian lands. But beyond practicality, Viking beards were an art form, a language of braids, lengths, and shapes that communicated everything from tribe to temperament. On a fringe note, some scholars suggest Viking men even used natural substances, possibly early versions of beard oils, to keep their facial hair soft and manageable. While there's no smoking gun of exact recipes, residue analyses on combs and containers hint that fragrant herbs like juniper or pine might have been part of their secret potions. Imagine a Viking lumberjack rubbing in a concoction smelling like fresh forest pine, who wouldn't want to smell like a Norse god before a battle. This combination of practical care and symbolic meaning makes Viking beards more than mere facial hair. They were a woven part of culture, identity, and even mysticism. So next time you glance at your reflection, think about those ancient men crafting their beards with care, preparing not just for war, but for a life woven with tradition. Remember that crocodile dung sunscreen we joked about in another video? Well, Viking beard care had its own oddities too, but let's save those for later. You reach for your grooming kit, a humble wooden box with an assortment of tools that seems surprisingly sophisticated for a people who lived over 1,000 years ago. Vikings weren't just rough seafarers, they were surprisingly meticulous about their beard care. Archaeologists have unearthed countless combs carved from bone antler, and even whale-baleen, often found in graves, alongside weapons and jewelry, suggesting that grooming was a ritual as important as wielding a sword. These combs, finely toothed and sometimes ornately decorated, were designed not just for hair, but specifically for beard maintenance. Imagine running a comb through your beard that's been preserved for centuries, a tactile connection to those distant days. Razors too shaped from bronze and iron have been recovered, showing that Vikings shaved certain areas, creating styles that went beyond the wild barbarian look Hollywood loves to show. The idea that Vikings never shaved is a myth. Instead, they preferred clean-shaven cheeks with carefully tended beards, sometimes shaping them to distinguish themselves from neighboring tribes. Historians still argue whether these grooming habits were influenced more by cultural exchange with neighboring Anglo-Saxon and Frankish peoples, or purely Norse innovation. But the real surprise comes with beard oils. While no Viking-era bottle neatly labeled beard oil has survived, residues on grooming artifacts hint at aromatic concoctions made from natural ingredients like animal fats mixed with crushed herbs and resins. These mixtures would have softened and conditioned the coarse hair, making it easier to braid and style. Some fringe researchers speculate Vikings might have even added crushed amber or pine tar to their oils, giving off a smoky, piney scent that lingered long after a raid or feast. Speaking of tar, it doubled as a waterproofing agent not just for ships, but possibly for keeping facial hair somewhat water-resistant. You wouldn't want your beard freezing stiff during a Norse winter after all. So a slick of tar-based balm might have been applied to maintain flexibility and warmth, though this remains a debated point among scholars. Every tool in a Viking grooming kit was designed for portability and durability. The Viking way of life required men to be ready to move or fight at a moment's notice, so grooming had to be efficient and effective. The combs were often small enough to tuck into a belt pouch, and the oils and balms stored in tiny carved containers or hollowed-out bones. These were not just items of vanity, but essential survival tools carried alongside knives and whetstones. And here's a fun, quirky detail. Some Viking grooming kits contain tweezers, presumably for removing stray hairs or even splinters, showing their attention to detail extended beyond mere appearance. It's hard not to picture a Viking chieftain delicately plucking a rogue hair while plotting his next expedition. As you run your fingers over these artifacts' modern reproductions, of course you sense a careful balance between practicality and personal expression. The beard grooming tools were a silent testament to a culture that valued both strength and refinement. So next time you pick up your beard comb or beard balm, remember you're part of a tradition that stretches back through centuries, from a rugged coastline where men took their grooming seriously enough to bury their combs with them. And about those mysterious beard oils, historians still argue whether these were used daily or reserved for special occasions like feasts and battles. Maybe the Viking equivalent of your Sunday best beard look you wake to the soft light filtering through a Viking longhouse window, the scent of smoke and pine wood still lingering. The day begins not with the clang of swords, but with the quiet, almost reverent ritual of beard care. Viking men understood that a well-maintained beard was a symbol of honor, strength, and respect, so their morning routine was part hygiene, part art form. First, there's the washing. While rivers and lakes were plentiful, Vikings didn't bathe daily as we do now, but they were known for their fastidious grooming habits. You splash cold water on your face, the shock awakening your senses and tightening your skin. Historians still argue whether Vikings used soap. Some evidence points to early soap making from animal fats and ash, but more often scrubbing with sand or crushed herbs was the norm. Imagine the gritty sensation of sand exfoliating your skin beneath your beard, loosening dirt and oils trapped in the dense tangle. Next comes combing. You take your bone or antler comb, lightweight, sturdy, and etched with simple patterns, and patiently work through your beard, untangling knots with careful strokes. It's a meditative process. Each pass aligns the hair, removing debris from last night's feasts or long voyages. Here's a quirky tidbit. Vikings sometimes used combs not just for grooming, but as status symbols. Some combs were intricately carved, almost jewelry-like, showing off wealth or rank. So when you comb your beard, imagine it doubling as a subtle flex of social standing. Then the oil. The mysterious beard oils likely concoctions of animal fats, pine resin, and fragrant herbs like juniper or rosemary are gently rubbed into your beard and skin. This keeps your beard's soft tames flyaways and may have even offered some protection against the chill winds that bite through the fjords. While no recipe has survived intact, experimental archaeologists have recreated similar blends, describing them as pleasantly woody with a hint of smoky resin. Just imagine the scent lingering subtly around you, an invisible cloak of Norse wilderness. Styling is next if you're feeling fancy. You might braid a few strands, weaving in small beads or metal rings, both for flair and to prevent tangling. Braids could also signify your tribe or achievements, turning your beard into a living tapestry of your life's story. Historians still argue whether all Vikings practiced beard braiding or if it was limited to certain regions or classes. Either way, it's clear that grooming was more than vanity. It was a form of communication. The last step is practical trimming. Using small bronze or iron razors, you clean up the edges and shape your beard. Viking grooming wasn't about wildness, it was about control. A neatly trimmed beard commanded respect and made it easier to wear helmets or masks in battle without hair getting in the way. And yes, there's an oddly modern element here. Vikings understood the importance of beard health. You wouldn't expect a 1,000-year-old warrior culture to care about split ends, but evidence suggests they avoided letting their beards become matted or unmanageable, likely because hygiene and appearance were linked to personal honor. So as you follow this routine, feel the connection to those ancient men who took grooming seriously, not just for looks, but as a daily act of self-respect and identity. It's a gentle art one that balances utility symbolism and a dash of wilderness charm. Remember that pine-scented oil? It's like a Viking's version of your favorite cologne, except with fewer celebrity endorsements. Your beard frames your face like a living badge, but for Vikings, it was far more than just hair. It was a code. Different beard styles weren't random. They spoke volumes about who you were, your tribe, your role, even your marital status. Imagine stepping into a Viking gathering where everyone's beard silently broadcasts their story, a kind of facial Morse code. Straight from the fjords of Norway to the plains of Sweden, beard styles varied wildly. Some men preferred long flowing beards that spoke of wisdom and age, while others kept them short and neatly trimmed to project discipline and readiness. Historians still argue whether these styles were strictly regional or if personal preference mixed with practical needs ruled the day. Take the full bushy beard, it was often associated with chieftains or warriors who had survived many battles, a sign of virility and strength. On the other hand, a shorter, more styled beard could indicate a trader or craftsman who valued neatness and social interaction. Women reportedly found braided beards particularly attractive, associating the intricate patterns with patience and skill. Beard shapes could also signal marital status. Some evidence suggests that married men wore their beards differently from bachelors, perhaps more elaborate, or adorned a silent announcement of their commitment. Fringe archaeologists even speculate about beard badges, small metal clips or charms woven into the hair to indicate family or clan ties. You might wonder, how did they manage these styles without modern tools? Well, the grooming kits we talked about earlier included specialized combs and razors, perfect for shaping and maintaining these diverse styles. Some Viking sagas mention characters recognized by their unique beards alone, underscoring how crucial beard identity was. And here's a quirky detail: in some Norse myths, gods and heroes were described with legendary beards. Thor's beard was famously red and fiery, while Odin's was long and white, symbolizing wisdom. These divine beard archetypes influenced real-world trends, as mortals aspired to emulate their gods' facial hair. Historians still argue whether this mythological beard symbolism directly shaped everyday grooming or was more poetic exaggeration. Your beard, then, is a canvas one that Vikings painted with status belief and personal flair. Every curl, braid, and trim carries meaning, a silent language passed down through generations. So next time you style your beard, imagine you're participating in a 1,000-year-old conversation, one where your face says more than words ever could. And if you ever feel self-conscious about a rogue curl or a stray hair, just remember even the mighty Thor probably had to wrestle with a beard itch now and then. You run your fingers through your beard deciding where to braid and which beads to add, because for Vikings, beard braiding wasn't just practical, it was an art form and a way to personalize identity. Braids kept the hair manageable during storms, battles, and long voyages, but they were also canvases for creativity. Some Vikings adorned their braids with beads carved from bone, glass, or metal, while others used rings made of bronze or silver to mark status or commemorate achievements. Imagine sitting by a fire. After a long day, a fellow warrior delicately weaving tiny metal rings into his beard strands. Those rings could tell a story perhaps about a recent raid, a victorious battle, or a family lineage. Viking women often took part in this ritual, carefully braiding their men's beards, while whispering tales of ancestors or blessings. The presence of these adornments turned a beard into a living scrapbook of personal and tribal history. Archaeological finds have uncovered not only combs, but also small decorative items believed to be beard beads and rings, some surprisingly ornate for such a rugged culture. Historians still argue about how widespread this practice was. Were these adornments the domain of chieftains and nobles, or did common Vikings enjoy similar embellishments? The truth is likely somewhere in the middle, with variations depending on region, wealth, and occasion. There's a quirky and lesser-known tidbit about Viking beard braiding. Some sagas mention warriors using strands of their enemies' hair braided into their own beards as trophies, a practice both intimidating and deeply symbolic. While this might sound like a Hollywood exaggeration, it reflects the deeply personal and social nature of beard styling. Braiding styles themselves were surprisingly varied. Some Vikings opted for tight, intricate braids running parallel along the chin, while others favored loose-flowing twists that caught the light and moved with every breath. The care required for such styles meant grooming was a daily ritual. Braids had to be redone and beads reattached, ensuring your beard was always ready to impress or intimidate. So as you weave your fingers through your beard, now think of it as connecting with a tradition where hair carried history, pride, and even power. Your braids aren't just fashion, they're a statement, a nod to a culture that saw beauty in strength and storytelling woven strand by strand. And if you find a bead tangled in there tomorrow, consider yourself a true Viking descendant. Just maybe don't leave it to your barber to discover. You might imagine Vikings as smelly, unwashed barbarians after all. That's what movies and cartoons love to show. But scratch beneath the surface and you'll find their hygiene habits were surprisingly sophisticated. Far from the stinky wild men stereotype, Vikings took cleanliness seriously, especially when it came to grooming their beards. Daily bathing in rivers, lakes, or heated bathhouses wasn't unheard of. In fact, archaeological digs in Viking settlements have uncovered soapstones and small soap-like lumps made from animal fats and ash. Vikings used these early soaps alongside scrubbing with abrasive materials like sand to keep their skin and beards clean. Historians still argue whether these hygiene routines were widespread or limited to urban settlements like Burka and Hedeby, but the evidence points to a culture that valued cleanliness as a mark of social status. Your beard was a focal point in these routines, A tangled, greasy beard would be a social faux pas, especially for men of standing. Using bone combs, Vikings would regularly untangle and clean their beards, removing dirt, food particles, and insects, yes. Bugs could be an unfortunate beard companion in those days. Here's a quirky tidbit: some Viking combs have tiny built-in picks, perhaps for scratching or removing lice, showing their commitment to detailed care. More intriguingly, recent chemical analyses of burial sites revealed traces of fragrant herbs and resins in grooming containers. Vikings likely used these natural perfumes not just for scent, but for their antibacterial properties, keeping beards fresher and healthier. Imagine your beard subtly smelling of pine or juniper, not too different from your favorite shampoo today. But of course, it wasn't all roses. Vikings' rigorous hygiene practices didn't always extend to bathing, after battles, or long voyages. And historians still argue whether their standards matched those of Roman or medieval Europeans. Yet relative to many contemporaries, Vikings stood out for their grooming. And let's bust a myth: Vikings did not use crocodile dung as sunscreen. That was ancient Egyptians. But they did employ natural remedies, like applying fish oils or animal fats, to protect their skin and perhaps their beards from the harsh Nordic sun and wind. So next time you shampoo and condition, remember you're in good company with those meticulous Viking ancestors who refused to let a beard become a breeding ground for dirt or trouble. And if you find your beard smelling slightly like a pine forest, thank those ancient grooming rituals for that timeless scent. You tighten the leather straps on your helmet, feeling the familiar weight settle over your head as you prepare for battle. But before you charge into the fray, there's one more important ritual to complete your beard care. In Viking warfare, a well-maintained beard was more than just vanity. It was a psychological weapon and a practical asset. A thick, carefully groomed beard could intimidate enemies, making you appear larger and fiercer, much like a lion's mane. In close combat, your beard was part of your face armor, adding a layer of cushioning against slashes or blunt blows. Historians still argue whether Vikings braided their beards specifically for battle to prevent opponents from grabbing hold, a reasonable theory given how dangerous hair pulling can be in a fight. Battle-ready beard grooming involved oiling to keep the hair supple and braiding to prevent loose strands from obstructing vision or becoming liabilities. You might even tuck in small beads or rings that jingled subtly, announcing your presence to comrades in the chaos. The sounds of metal clinking mixed with the cries of war. It was both practical and morale-boosting. There's a quirky note from the sagas. Some Viking warriors believed that the gods blessed their beards with strength, and damaging an enemy's beard was an insult that demanded revenge. One tale tells of a berserker who ripped out the beard of a rival chief mid-fight, sparking a brutal and personal feud. While these stories might lean into legend, they highlight how seriously beards were taken even on the battlefield. Practical grooming before battle also included trimming the edges to avoid snagging helmet straps or chainmail. The last thing you wanted was your beard caught in gear or stuck in a shield wall melee. So your morning routine before combat was meticulous, blending beauty and function. And yes, those beard oils likely contained ingredients to soothe skin irritations from battle grime or cold winds. Another example of Viking ingenuity. Keeping the skin beneath healthy meant your beard could withstand long campaigns without becoming a nuisance. So as you prepare to swing your axe or draw your sword, remember your beard is your ally, a fierce symbol of identity, a buffer against danger, and a subtle psychological weapon in the ancient art of intimidation. If only modern warfare came with beard care instructions, right? Maybe then we'd see fewer helmet hair disasters. You sit beside the fire, watching the flickering flames dance as a Viking woman from your village approaches with a small comb, offering to help with your beard. You might be surprised to learn that Viking women played a vital role in beard culture, not just as caretakers, but as trendsetters, and in some rare cases, even participants in the beard-wearing tradition themselves. Viking women were known for their strong influence on household and social customs, including grooming. They often braided their men's beards, adding beads and charms that carried symbolic meanings or familial significance. This act wasn't just about aesthetics. It was a ritual of bonding and respect, reinforcing social ties and identity within the community. There are intriguing stories of female warriors, shield maidens, who defied gender norms and took to battle. Some sagas hint that these women might have sported facial hair, or at least mimicked masculine grooming styles to assert their warrior status. Historians still argue whether these accounts are factual or literary embellishments, but the idea opens a fascinating window into Viking notions of gender and identity. Women also passed down knowledge of beard care remedies, herbal oils, balms, and comb-making techniques, preserving traditions that kept Viking beards healthy and stylish. In a world without barbershops, this domestic grooming expertise was essential. A quirky piece of folklore claims that if a woman braided a man's beard with a particular pattern, it could protect him from evil spirits or bad luck in battle. Whether superstition or belief, it shows how deeply intertwined beard grooming was with Viking spirituality and daily life. In a way, Viking women were the unsung guardians of beard culture, shaping the appearance and meaning of facial hair from behind the scenes. Without their hands weaving braids and crafting oils, the proud Viking beard might never have achieved its legendary status. So, next time you find yourself fiddling with your beard, think about those ancient women quietly shaping tradition and style, often overlooked but utterly essential. And if your partner ever offers to braid your beard, maybe say yes. You could be honoring centuries of Viking custom and avoiding a beard mishap. You settle into the warm glow of the hearth, watching the flicker of flames as the village barber sharpens his tools. In Viking society, skilled groomers and barbers held an important but sometimes overlooked role, not just for appearance, but for health and ritual. These specialists were the trusted keepers of grooming secrets. Their services went beyond simple trimming. They offered beard styling, haircuts, and even minor medical procedures like bloodletting or wound care. Archaeologists have discovered barbers' knives and combs together, underscoring their multifaceted role. Historians still argue how formalized their status was. Were they itinerant specialists, part of the household staff, or respected community figures with specialized knowledge? The grooming process was ritualistic. Before a battle or feast, warriors might visit these experts to have their beards cleaned, braided, and oiled, ensuring they looked and felt their best. Barbers might even apply fragrant balms to soothe skin irritated by wind or battle gear. An intriguing detail is that some Viking grooming tools were ornately decorated, hinting that barbers themselves could be artisans who crafted their own combs and knives. These tools were often buried with their owners, suggesting pride in their craft and a belief in an afterlife where grooming mattered. Barbers also played a social role. Their shops or gathering spots were hubs for news gossip and community bonding. It's easy to imagine heated discussions about the latest raid or political intrigue while waiting for a trim or a beard braid. So the next time you visit your barber or groom yourself, remember the Viking specialists who merged practicality, artistry, and community in the simple act of beard care. Their work wasn't just about looking good, it was about preparing for life's challenges, strengthening bonds, and maintaining identity. And if you think trimming your beard is just a chore, consider the Viking barbers who balanced precision and pride, wielding their tools like warriors of style. You run your hand over a worn wooden carving eyes, tracing the intricate lines of a Viking longship, its prow adorned with a fearsome bearded dragon. In Viking art and literature, beards were everywhere, etched into runestones woven into tales and immortalized in myth. They weren't just facial hair, they were symbols loaded with meaning, magic, and identity. Take the sagas, for example, long narrative poems and stories passed down through generations. Heroes and gods alike are described with beards that symbolize their strength, wisdom, or ferocity. Odin the All-Father sports a long white beard emblematic of his wisdom and age. Thor's fiery red beard reflects his tempestuous nature and warrior spirit. These divine beard archetypes were not just storytelling flourishes. They shaped how ordinary Vikings viewed their own facial hair, inspiring styles and grooming habits. Carvings on stones and wood often show men with elaborately styled beards and mustaches, sometimes braided and adorned. These images serve as visual affirmations of power and social status. Historians still argue whether the elaborate beard depictions represent everyday styles or idealized versions of Viking masculinity. One quirky tidbit: some Viking artists gave supernatural qualities to beards in their work. In certain carvings, beards appear almost serpentine or flame-like, possibly symbolizing protection or spiritual power. The beard could be seen as a living extension of the warrior's soul, warding off evil or attracting good fortune. In poetry, beards often appear as metaphors, symbols of honor, maturity, or even a man's vitality. Losing a beard in battle was sometimes depicted as a grave dishonor, akin to losing one's life or reputation. This cultural weight gave beards a near mystical importance in Norse society. So as you consider your own beard, think of the centuries of stories and art that have woven it into the fabric of identity and mythology. Your beard is not just hair, it's a living tradition, part history, part legend, and entirely your own. And if you ever feel a bit dramatic about your beard, remember it's been legendary for over 1,000 years. You journey northward across the Scandinavian landscapes, from Norway's rugged fjords through Denmark's rolling hills to Sweden's dense forests. And notice something curious: Viking beard styles varied quite a bit from place to place. Each region had its own preferred way of wearing facial hair, shaped by climate, culture, and perhaps even local pride. In Norway, beards tended to be longer and more flowing, often left natural or only lightly braided. The harsher coastal winds and colder temperatures made full beards practical for warmth, so the Norsemen favored thick, voluminous facial hair that shielded their skin. Norwegian Viking graves frequently include grooming tools designed for maintaining length, indicating a culture that prized their long beards. Denmark, on the other hand, leaned toward shorter, well-trimmed beards, sometimes paired with elaborate mustaches. Danish Vikings were known as skilled traders and sailors, and their grooming style reflected a neatness suited to bustling ports and social encounters. Archaeologists have found numerous finely carved combs in Danish sites, suggesting a strong emphasis on beard maintenance and style. Swedish Vikings often favored more intricate braiding and beard adornment. Some regions show a penchant for metal rings and beads woven into the beard, hinting at a culture that embraced decorative facial hair as a status symbol. The dense forests and fertile lands might have allowed for more elaborate grooming rituals, compared to the rougher coastal climates. Historians still argue how much these regional variations overlapped or mixed during Viking expeditions and settlement. After all, Vikings traveled extensively, encountering diverse cultures and sometimes adopting new styles. Trade and intermarriage blurred rigid distinctions, but the regional beard fashions remained a source of identity pride. A quirky archaeological find from Sweden revealed a tiny bronze ring believed to be a beard bead. lost during grooming tiny artifacts like this help piece together how Vikings personalized their facial hair. So as you consider your own beard style, you might unknowingly be channeling centuries of Scandinavian tradition, whether you're rocking a wild Norwegian flow, a tidy Danish trim, or a braided Swedish flare. And if your beard ever feels rebellious, just remember it's doing what your Viking ancestors did, expressing where you're from sometimes without saying a word. You find yourself stepping beyond the familiar fjords and forests, crossing into medieval Europe where Viking beards made quite an impression, sometimes blending in, sometimes clashing with local fashions. The Viking beard wasn't just a personal style, it became a cultural statement that resonated, conflicted, or merged with continental trends. During the Viking Age, roughly 8th to 11th centuries, Europe was a patchwork of kingdoms, each with its own grooming codes. In some regions, like the Frankish kingdoms, clean-shaven faces or neatly trimmed beards were preferred, especially among the nobility and clergy, symbolizing civility and control. Vikings, with their robust, often longer beards, sometimes stood out sharply against this backdrop. Trade warfare and settlement led to cultural exchange. Some Viking settlers adopted local grooming habits, trimming or shaving to fit in, while others maintained their traditional beards as marks of identity and defiance. Historians still argue whether Viking beard styles influenced European fashions or remained distinctly Norse. Interestingly, in the British Isles, where Vikings settled extensively, beard styles became a fascinating hybrid. Archaeological finds suggest that Norse settlers mixed their beard traditions with Anglo-Saxon grooming, creating unique styles that combined braiding with shorter trims. A quirky anecdote from medieval chronicles tells of a Viking chieftain whose beard was so impressive it inspired fear and awe, yet a local priest once threatened to shave it off as a symbol of forced conversion, a clash between pagan identity and Christian norms. Over time, as Viking influence waned, beard fashions in Europe evolved dramatically. The Vikings' bold facial hair gradually gave way to more restrained styles during the later Middle Ages, though echoes of Norse grooming lingered in certain regions and folk traditions. So your beard might carry whispers of this fascinating cultural tug-of-war, a living relic of a time when hair was as much a battlefield as the sword. And if you ever feel caught between styles, just remember the Viking chieftain who refused to part with his beard no matter what. Sometimes a beard is a statement worth defending. You notice the passage of time in the shifting tides of beard culture, as Viking traditions ebb and flow through centuries of history. After the height of the Viking Age, their distinctive beard styles gradually faded, replaced by evolving fashions across Europe that favored either clean-shaven faces or elaborate mustaches and pointed beards. The decline of Viking beard traditions wasn't just about style. It reflected broader cultural and religious shifts. As Christianity spread, the rough pagan image of the Viking gave way to new ideals of decorum and grooming aligned with the church's values. Historians still argue how much religion versus social evolution influenced this change, but the beard's decline was marked. Yet the Viking beard didn't vanish entirely. In some rural and northern communities, especially in Scandinavia, traditional beard styles persisted, quietly passed down through generations as symbols of heritage and pride. Occasionally, medieval kings and nobles would sport beards inspired by Viking fashions, signaling strength and connection to ancient roots. Fast forward to the 19th and 20th centuries, and the Viking beard experienced a surprising revival. The Romantic movement sparked renewed interest in Norse mythology and Viking culture, inspiring artists, writers, and even some fashion trends. More recently, the modern beard renaissance, fueled by hipsters and pop culture's fascination with rugged masculinity, has brought Viking-style beards back into vogue. Beard enthusiasts today often look to Viking imagery for inspiration, embracing braids, oils, and bold lengths. Some even experiment with recreating historical beard care rituals, blending ancient tradition with modern grooming technology. A quirky modern twist beard competitions and festivals now celebrate Viking-inspired styles where participants don braids and beads, proudly carrying forward an age-old art. So your beard might be part of this long story of decline and revival, a living thread connecting you to Vikings past, present, and future. And if you find yourself braiding a beard bead at a festival someday, you'll be standing in a long line of proud tradition. You lean closer to the flickering firelight as stories of Viking beard folklore whisper through the smoky air. Vikings didn't just style their beards, they believed those beards held power, protection, and even luck. Their facial hair was wrapped in superstition as much as tradition. For example, some believed that touching a beard could transfer strength or courage, making beards almost magical conduits of personal power. Warriors would sometimes stroke their beards before battle, focusing their will and drawing on ancestral spirits. Historians still argue how literal these beliefs were, whether symbolic or actual spiritual practice. But it's clear beards had mystical significance. Another quirky belief involved bad luck or evil spirits. Vikings thought that letting your beard grow wild without care could invite misfortune. So grooming was a form of warding off evil. Certain beard styles were thought to repel malevolent forces. Braided beards with protective charms woven and acted like talismans. Imagine a beard as your personal force field, woven from hair and superstition. There are also tales of gods and mythical creatures whose beards had special properties. Thor's red beard blazing like fire, or trolls whose unkempt facial hair symbolized their wild, untamed nature. These stories reinforced cultural ideas about beards as symbols of order or chaos. Even more oddly, some Viking women believed that touching a man's beard without permission could steal his strength or luck, adding a layer of social etiquette around beard care and interaction. So as you run your fingers through your beard tonight, think about the ancient beliefs wrapped around those strands, the whispers of magic, protection, and mystery that made Viking beards more than just hair. And if you ever catch yourself talking to your beard, maybe you're channeling a little bit of Viking superstition, and that's perfectly fine. You sit quietly, fingers tracing the familiar lines of your beard, now a bridge across centuries, to Viking ancestors who practiced this gentle art with care and intention. Their traditions woven with meaning and mysticism, practical needs, and proud identity ripple into your own daily ritual. The beard you nurture tonight is more than a personal statement. It's a living thread connecting past and present. Modern beard culture borrows heavily from these ancient roots. The resurgence of beard oils, intricate braiding, and careful grooming reflects a timeless desire to balance strength with elegance, ruggedness with refinement. Many beard enthusiasts now seek to channel the spirit of the Vikings, blending history with self-expression. You might find yourself experimenting with braids or adding beads, not just because it looks cool, but because you're tapping into 1,000 years of tradition. The same goes for those beard oils that soften and protect. Their ancient counterparts probably carried the scent of pine forests and smoky fires, elements of the wild Nordic world. Historians still debate how widespread Viking grooming customs really were, but the evidence points to a culture that respected personal care as a form of honor and identity. And you, by embracing these rituals today, participate in a quiet revival of that legacy. So tonight, as you wind down and the hum of the fan blends with your breath, feel the calm strength of those ancient beards wrap gently around you. Let the stories, the myths, The rituals ease your mind into rest, knowing you carry a piece of that heritage with you. And if you find your beard catching the soft light in a new way tomorrow morning, remember, you're not just grooming, you're connecting to history, to identity, to something quietly powerful. Now, as your eyes grow heavy and the world around you softens into shadows, let the memory of those ancient Nordic winds soothe your thoughts. Imagine the gentle touch of a pine-scented breeze weaving through your beard, carrying whispers of distant fjords and quiet forests. The rituals of grooming, of care, of honoring tradition settle around you like a soft cloak. There is comfort in these stories, a quiet strength in the knowledge that beneath your beard lies a lineage of men and women who valued not just appearance, but identity, connection, and meaning. Feel your breathing slow, the tension in your face dissolve, and the pulse of history lull you gently toward sleep. Let your mind drift through braided strands and glowing embers, through tales of gods and warriors, through the simple, enduring act of caring for oneself. Tonight, the Viking beard is more than hair. It is peace, it is legacy, it is rest. So close your eyes, breathe deeply, and let the gentle art of Viking beard grooming carry you softly into dreams, sweet dreams.